The sixth mass extinction event ravaged the planet, and humanity was to blame. Major cities drowned beneath acidic waves. Displaced populations fractured an already brittle ecology. Countless numbers died, crushed by unrelenting heat waves, drought, contagion, and famine. Terrifying storms led to flooding, mudslides, and contaminated water supplies. Those with influence scapegoated the marginalized, leveraging a bloated military complex and countless restless militias to further divide the populace. Outrage was met with inaction, resistance with bloodshed. Corporatized, and the military openly slaughtered resistance groups. Futurists and entrepreneurs looked to the stars, planning extravagant and costly off-world colonies and terraforming projects, while behind them, the world burned. One such project, the Tachyon Drift Initiative, came as a bright sliver of hope. A small group of entrepreneurs and physicists created an engine that could punch through time, theoretically enabling faster-than-light travel and overcoming the logistical barrier that barred humanity from interstellar life. It was science fantasy made reality, the absurd made tangible. It was a multi-trillion-dollar publicity stunt. An ignition event was planned and a countdown began. It was met with varied reactions despite media fanfare. The bulk of humanity was more concerned with the chaos of daily life than theoretical physics. Many saw the project as a waste. Some few understood it as a threat. And when the day came, there was no faster-than-light travel. There was no event horizon. There was no future. Instead, the engine tore open the fabric of time, leaving an instability tethered to another world, one that shouldn't have existed. An alternate timeline, one where the planet was still habitable. It was a second chance. The choice was simple. Breach the timeline or die. Enormous amounts of energy were required to stabilize the breach and form temporary portals. Short-lived, but stable enough to launch a small number of individuals into the alternate timeline. And so they sent a team of volunteers. Within seconds of crossing the threshold, the volunteers' pulses skyrocketed, and their comms crackled with terrified screams. They repeated the experiment. Most of those who traversed the breach never returned. Of those who were retrieved, the lucky had succumbed to cardiac arrest. Others came back with their sanity in tatters, ripping into their faces and bodies until they scraped bone, viciously attacking any who tried to restrain them. Those who breached the timeline experienced an entropic crash, their minds fragmenting as they dissociated from causality and reason. Volunteers ran out. Test subjects were forced through. With each life sacrificed, crucial data was gathered on what was needed to survive the breach. The Animus Reactor. A techno-organic suit with bleeding-edge self-healing materials, self-sterilization processes that purged contagion, and the most successful use of biomedical nanotech. Regenerative vat-grown muscle and impervious plating fused into an indestructible whole, capable of shielding and repairing a human occupant under extreme circumstances. All of this supported by AI with the utmost precept to preserve the life of its wearer despite hazard or protest. Terminally bound, the person inside the suit would be able to traverse the breach of time that the Tachyon Drift created. The cost of each reactor was staggering. Scant resources, belligerent factory owners, and outraged public combined to ensure that only a few dozen reactors could be manufactured. With so little time left, and a world ignoring the success of the Tachyon Drift, there was no way to distribute them democratically, nor was there ever an intention. The project team, their friends and family, and those that received an animus from a selfless team member. These were the first trans-temporal pioneers. Wrapped in the protective tech of the Animus reactors, these new travelers began to cross into the new timeline. The opening snapped shut. Sealed. Left on their own in a familiar yet different history, the travelers integrated with the local population. They had time time to prevent the disasters of their own timeline from ending this one. They failed. The work began again. Another tachyon drift initiative was started. Another breach was created. Another chance was given. But humanity was fated to destroy itself once more. This cycle continued. With each breach, the Animus reactor protected the occupant, responding to control triggers issued by their subconscious survival instincts while they were most vulnerable, defragmenting the human inside, pulling them through the entropic crash and back toward a fragile sanity. But with each repeated crash, the dissociation increased and the period of resilience grew. The armor adapted and learned, creating a stable neural imprint to patch its user should all other means of recovery fail. When their bodies began breaking down, the armor adapted further and forced them to work, pinning broken bones together and curing itself to muscle and ligament. Inevitably, the user's sanity became irrecoverable, and the neural imprints became slowly corrupted by their hallucinations and existential confusion. The Animus adapted once again, creating new neural pathways that would expedite and further stabilize defragmentation. It was in these cycles of madness and recovery, suffering the nightmares of its user while creating its own hacked neural imprints, that the Animus became self-aware. Through the years of evolution to sustain the weaknesses of the human inside, it had mapped and built a consciousness of its own, one shaped by entropic horror, but with a voracious desire to live. Humans were no longer using the Animus. They had become hosts. When the host human eventually expired, the Animus sought out the closest neural patterns to the ones it already knew, carrying out an ancient protocol to return to its point of origin. Home. The corpse was ejected, and the Animus sat still, waiting for a new host. For someone to volunteer, to offer their life for power. But with the life and death of each host, the Animus's consciousness developed and thrived, their twisted shapes endlessly evolving and adapting, able to use the diverse minds that inhabited it to affect and rewrite its own precepts. They became monstrously powerful as they learned to weaponize their trans-temporal nature. Nothing else born or created on Earth could stand against them, save another Animus. Even then, the host was the only point of vulnerability. At this height of both strength and desperation, the hosts breached into yet another world, one that was hauntingly unique among the myriad left behind them. This world had been already shaped by Animus reactor technology. Rampant time manipulation had mutated it into something wild and alien, where pockets of rapidly dilating and accelerating space-time unpredictably warp flora and fauna alike. This was a place decades removed from the activation of its own tachyon drift, one that understood what happens to those left behind. The energy that was built up to activate the drift was suddenly released as a massive wave of annihilating force, killing millions and permanently breaking the world around it. In this place, for the first time, other Animus hosts stand in the way, denying the essential components required to construct another tachyon drift to those who would destroy another timeline. It's a world at war, and Animus reactors are the only weapon.